Hey, good morning. Welcome to PDX Garden Home. It's a little bit chilly this weekend, but this has got to be one of my favorite times of the year. We're in September and things are cooling down. You know, August is hot and dry, and a lot of times it gets so hot that things stop blooming and things stop growing. And now in September, things cool down and we get this final rush of growth, and it's just amazing harvest time and amazing growth. And it's nicer to be out here because it's not unbearably hot during the day. And so here I am, ready to garden. So come along with me. Let's do a tour today. Well, behind me here is the central garden before we get to the main beds. And on the right, the first tree is a persimmon that was planted last fall. Then we've got some eggplants and tomatoes. On the left is some summer squash, tomatoes, cabbage, kale. There's another persimmon tree directly in front of us here. There's eggplants there you can see on the ground. And you can see just to the right-hand side a white currant tomato. And of course, more kale, broccoli in the ground as well. These black-eyed Susans just popped out a couple months ago and they look great here, but I don't know where they came from. I just planted a combination of cabbage, bok choy, choy sum, lettuce, chard all in this bed, and I've watered it in. I had leeks in here early on that bolted, but I've left them for decoration. The west side of the greenhouse here has become a jungle and I need to clean it up a bit, but this white dahlia, the center display of the pot, is one of many large white dahlias around the garden, and I love them. While the spring garden here is characterized by daffodils and tulips, the late summer garden, as you'll see, is characterized by dahlias and zinnias. Well, this is the curbside bed in the north kitchen garden. It's the flower border that gets the most sun, and we pack it with as much as we can. The roses here predate me. They were in the garden before I got here. They grow very, very quickly and very tall, and I try to cut them down to keep them to a manageable size, but I never quite can keep up with it. This bed is otherwise looking a little scraggly and disordered. It's expressing the tired feeling of a long season where it's performed center stage for many months, starting all the way back in March. But it does have some energy to put up some last features. We see some large purple zinnias, the tall coleus that grew high because I didn't get around to pinching them out in order to make them low and bushy. And we've got the sophistication of these burnt red sunflowers here too. Here on the other side of the bed is giving us one last explosion of the colors. These French marigolds were from saved seeds, one of the few seeds I actually try my hand at saving. You also have more giant zinnias, some dahlias from seed, verbena, which has been self-seeded from prior years, and can you spot the artichoke flower? I don't know why they do this, but check out what the squirrels doing. They pull up the new plants the new starts that I put. They just pull the seedlings out of the ground for no particular reason. I mean, I'm guessing it's the squirrels. I tend to blame them for everything around here. My asparagus wasn't a large harvest this year. I'm hoping these ferns are transferring enough energy into the roots that we'll have a much bigger crop next year. This is the east beds of the kitchen garden, and they're surrounded by lawn. They're mostly planted with broccoli and red amaranth. The red amaranth you see around the garden is something I grow for decoration. I love the height and the colors from July through the end of the season, and it creates a biomass at the end of the season for the compost pile. I didn't have to grow these amaranth in the basement nursery this year. They just self-seeded from prior years. Well, this is the second year that I haven't got many pumpkins. This year, to add insult, the 2 pumpkins that did come in were viciously attacked, probably by rats. While the pumpkins didn't come out, the cucumbers thrived here. I had Armenian cucumbers, Market More, and Japanese long. Well, I'm here by the center pots in the north kitchen garden, a place where I love to put flowers. And on the left are the straw flowers, and on the right there's a burst of pink that are petunias. Here, the pink and white celosia. This is the most successful I've ever had growing this kind of flower after several years of attempts. They're looking good this year. So some years you have success with some things, failures with others, but the celosia was a success this year. I've actually been seeing some birds of prey above the garden this weekend. I'm not sure exactly what kind of birds they are or what they're up to. I just hear that classic kind of call that they make. And yeah, I don't know what's catching their attention down here, but it's kind of exciting and fun to see them. This border has a combination of echinacea and nicotiana. I've been talking about it in videos all summer, and yeah, it's finishing off nicely here, and I hope you've enjoyed it this season. This is an area of the garden I call the fruit tree corridor. And here in the fruit tree corridor, I'm going to start on the north and walk you through to the south towards the rose gate. The trees that you see here are a pear, followed by different varieties of apple, and then on the end there's more apple trees and a peach tree. I didn't get any of the fruit from this corridor this year, well, except for a few pears and an apple here and there. I think the blossoms were killed off when we had a false spring back in March. It caused the trees to flower, and then later we had a freeze and a snow. These trees will be 1 year older next year, and we're set up for potentially a good harvest. So I'm just banking on everything being great next year with them. Well, here in the greenhouse in September, things are winding down. I've had a few eggplant harvests out of here over the summer, but not enough for all the plant growth that I had here. I'm thinking about not doing the eggplants in the greenhouse next year. My favorite plant for chewing on in the garden is this stevia over here, or sometimes called the sweet leaf. This melon smells amazing. Its sweet fragrance is filling the greenhouse. These little peppers are called Baquinto, and it's my first time growing them. Some people pickle these and eat them. I won't have time to do that, so I'm just growing the plants for fun and decoration. I think I might take some of the pots in the house to put on the table as decor. These little fairy eggplants are small but easy to grow, and when it comes to eating, I like them. Well, I've got some specific things I want to show you around the garden. Let's start with the yard-long beans. I don't usually get these to produce, but this year they're about 2 feet long. And then there was the corn. I'll show you what the corn looked like before the harvest. It's done now. Here's a small ear that I got. You can see on this one, the top of the cob is not filled out, but the rest of it is looking perfect. And then we've got these clementine tomatoes. These were a first for me this season. They're going to be one of my favorites going forward. They're a large cherry type, almost the size of a golf ball, and they're very deep orange. It's not as sweet as a sun gold, but it is very good tasting, quite balanced. The blackberries are super ready, but unfortunately they're too soft and many of them are spoiled. Hopefully we'll get more before the end of the season over the next few weeks. And finally, the morning glory. Grandpa Oats has been a go-to for me every year, and you can see here why I love it. Well, we're getting big tomato harvests now, and I've moved my tomato harvesting station into the shed to keep the rats and squirrels out of it, the birds perhaps. What else am I harvesting? Cucumbers, beans, corn, eggplants, summer squash, peppers, more onions, always finding more onions in the ground. This is the time of year when all the summer crops come in for me. Well, this middle garden has become a main attraction for me this month of September. Here we see the dahlias, pansies, gaillardia, and spinning around, those are banana trees. They're there just for decoration. We don't get bananas here. Our grapes have just matured enough to start putting on some fruit this year. Not a lot, but this is their first year fruiting. That's fragrant jasmine framing the back end of this middle garden. Well, these here behind me are what I call the main garden beds. They are veggie beds, and I occasionally put flowers in them too. They're the closest to the greenhouse, and they're where I started gardening here before I expanded to the rest of the property. Here's what you're seeing out here. Echinacea on the left, followed by dino kale, then the morning glories, then some calendula, some hot biscuits amaranth, and beans on the trellis. On the right you have old broccoli plants, more kale, of course the tomatoes, followed by beans on the trellis. Oh, and I fell on my butt the other day around here. Square in the middle there are the Japanese trifle tomatoes. In the center, or what I'm walking toward, is my broccoli tree. This is broccoli I've grown for 2 seasons, and it hasn't given much in the way of heads over the last few months, so I'm curious what it's going to do next. Beyond the zinnias, you see the last of the fall starts, still waiting to go in the ground. At this point, I should refer to them as my winter starts. On the trellis at the right are squashes including kabocha and butternut along with runner beans. Petunias have burned out for now, and dahlias have become the star. On the right, you've got rutabaga for fall in the bed, more broccoli, tomatoes, and at the end by the greenhouse there, I've got my pots of mint. As many of you know, mint will get away from you, which is why I keep them in pots here. You'll see broccoli, kale, cabbage, tomatoes, and at the end there, calendula again, more hot biscuits, amaranth. I am a heavy brassica gardener. It's something that grows well for us here in the Pacific Northwest, and I like to eat most brassicas. So more, you guessed it, kale and broccoli. But what's different here on the right is that I have some shelling beans. They're not quite ready yet. There's cucumbers on the trellis, the yard-long beans, there's carrots in here, and on the end there's more tomatoes and eggplants. At the end here is a massive volunteer fennel that reseeds itself in this location. It's done that for 3 years now, and I let it grow because I like to chew on the fennel seeds while I'm out in the garden. Well, what's in the nursery at this time of the year? We have foxgloves, painted daisies. I'm planning to pot those painted daisies up again and then maybe keep them warm over the winter and plant them out next spring. They've been growing for a year but still not ready to flower. We've got grasses that have never been planted. I might just compost those, but I'm still deciding. I have dahlias that I haven't put out into the ground. They were planted from seed back early spring last year, and they've just remained in these containers, and I don't know what to do at this point. I mean, I can just try to overwinter them this way, but traditionally you would try to save the tuber, but I don't think it's actually formed a tuber. I may be wrong if I dig around in there, but yeah, I'll have to figure that one out. And we've got little pots of cilantro. Beyond that, I have romaine, purple choy sum, bunching onions, butter lettuce, cauliflower, and cabbage. Well, here by the end of summer, this area in the East Garden that I call the Round is finally in full bloom. Well, kind of. The cosmos had grown massive with lots of foliage, but little to no flowers. I haven't figured out why that's happened, but I know this East Garden doesn't get quite as much sun as where I've had success with cosmos in the past at the curbside bed of the North Kitchen Garden. If you might know what's happening here, drop me a line in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This year I grew statice, which I hadn't grown for several years. I thought if we had some flower arrangements, these would be good filler. Alas, we didn't have time this year for much of that, but I think they've made good flowers in the bed. You can see the large purple zinnias. We waited all season for these. They have a long, hot period in order to bloom. The middle tower is barely disguising the sprinkler head. Morning Glory, Grandpa Oats, is the climber gracing that frame. I probably mentioned in previous vids how straw flowers last year were a new and exciting adventure for us. This year they finally come in, and they are a very steady player. We continue to really enjoy them. I've grown these large African marigolds for many years now. I love the big globes at the top. They provide a reliable feature for this flower bed. And of course, these blue and white pansies along the border of the Round here, they've been with us for the entire season. I wasn't sure what this flowering tree was. I think now that it may be a crepe myrtle, but I read about crepe myrtles and they are a summer flowering tree, and this really didn't flower until late summer. As we get into fall, one of the distinguishing characteristics of a crepe myrtle is supposed to be the fall leaf color. So I'll be paying attention here to see if that comes about. I came to this garden mostly being a vegetable gardener, so I didn't have an appreciation for the amazing bones and the landscape here. A few years in now, I'm still learning what some of these established plantings are.